Hello pre-calc students, this is Mr. Lull. I'm doing a tutorial video for IXL N1, find the properties of sine functions. So for our first problem, we need to find the period of our sinusoidal function, and the period is going to be the distance between maximums. That's going to be the distance between maximums. There's a distance between maxes or mins. It can also be described as one full cycle of the wave of the sinusoidal function. So now I just need to find the distance between maximums. And you can do that by looking at maximums and seeing what their values are, okay? So I have a point here at a maximum at negative pi, and I also have a maximum at 3 pi, and the distance between negative pi and 3 pi I can do by just starting with my rightmost point, 3 pi minus negative pi is equal to 3 pi plus pi, which is equal to 4 pi. So I have a period of 4 pi. So my period is equal to 4 pi. Let's see if I get that right. Excellent, I do. Clear annotations. All right, now I need to find the amplitude of the sinusoidal function. Now the amplitude is going to be the distance from the midline to a maximum or the minimum. So here I can see that the midline is going to be the average of the maximum plus the average of the maximum and the minimum. So the midline is going to be the max plus the min over 2. So here the midline is going to equal to negative 2 plus negative 6 over 2, which is equal to negative 8 over 2, which is equal to negative 4. So that's where our midline is at negative 4. We have a midline at negative 4 right here. And looking at the amplitude is the distance between the midline and the maximum. So I can see here with the amplitude, the distance from the midline to the maximum or the midline to the minimum is going to go from negative 4 to positive 2 to negative 2. And that's going to be a distance of 2. So the amplitude is going to be from negative 2, the distance between the maximum and the midline, so negative 2 minus negative 4, that's equal to 2. Our amplitude is always positive. So our amplitude is equal to 2. Great. Clear annotations. We need to find the vertical shift. Now the vertical shift is just going to be equal to the y value of the midline. All right, so the vertical shift here is going to be the midline, you can see visually, is at negative 3. So our vertical shift is at negative 3. Clear annotations? All right, now we need to find the period again. We have a period between, we have one value at pi, but a second value at 5 pi. So our period is going to be 5 pi minus pi, which is equal to 4 pi. That is our period. So we need to put in 4 pi, see if we're actually correct. Great, we are. Clear annotation. Now we need to find the amplitude of the sinusoidal function. The amplitude is the distance from the midline to the maximum. So here we have a maximum at 8 and a minimum at 0. The midline between 8 and 0, hopefully it's intuitive, it's at 4. 8 plus 0 over 2 is equal to 4. So our midline is at 4. So that's our midline. And the distance between our midline and the maximum and the minimum, that's going to be 8, 4. All right, so 4, that's our amplitude. That's the distance between the midline and the maximum. So amplitude is 4. You can also find that just the average of the maximum and the minimum. Clear annotations. Find the vertical shift of the sinusoidal function. So we have the vertical shift is the value of the midline. Our midline is going to be the average of the maximum and the minimum. That's going to be equal to 2 plus negative 2 over 2. So that's going to be 2 plus negative 2. That's going to be 0 over 2, which is equal to 0. So our vertical shift, we have no vertical shift because the midline has not changed. The midline is still at the x-axis. So I have a vertical shift of 0. Finding the period of the sinusoidal function. I'm going to be a little bit less explanatory at this rate, but we have each one of these units is pi over 4, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, and pi, that is equal to 4 pi over 4. So now we just need to, now we know that each unit is pi over 4 when you count the units in between each maximum. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a period, distance between maximums, period is 4 pi over 4, which is equal to pi. All right. Clearing annotations. Find the amplitude of the sinusoidal function. We have a midline at 4, so in fact, the amplitude, we can find the average between the maximum and the minimum, so we have a distance of 2 plus 4 is 6, so that'll be 6 plus 2 over 2. That's equal to 8 over 2, which means we have, actually, another way you can do it is the midline is at, because this has a distance of 4, the amplitude is 2. So 6 minus 2 over 2, that's equal to 4 over 2, which is equal to 2. Okay, annotations. Find the vertical shift of the sinusoidal function. Now we need to find the midline. So we have 6 over 0. So we have to find the vertical shift to find the midline. We'll have 6 plus 0 over 2, which is equal to 6 over 2, which is equal to 3. So that's our vertical shift right here. Once again, hopefully you can kind of see that the midline is at 3. That is a midline right there. All right. Clear annotations. This value right here is the vertical shift. All right, because that value is the vertical shift is plus 5. You need to find the amplitude. The amplitude, when we're looking at a trig graph, this is the amplitude right here, 3. So our amplitude is 3. Find our vertical shift. Here our vertical shift is 1. All right, our phase shift is going to be our term right here, pi. Okay, we're dividing it by our coefficient of x. And then we need to make sure that we're subtracting. So this is the general form of a trigonometric function, or at least for sine. A times the sine of b, x minus c plus d. In this specific case, a is equal to 1, b is equal to 1, all right, c is equal to negative pi, and d is equal to negative 4. Let's see why. Because we will ultimately have 1 times the sine of 1 times x minus negative pi minus 4. And this will once again resimplify to our equation. The sine of x plus pi minus 4. So here, what is our phase shift? Our phase shift, when we factor the 1, it's just going to be negative pi. Negative pi. Clear annotations? Find the period of the trigonometric function. So here our period is 2 pi over a coefficient of x. So let's rewrite our trig equation. 3 times the sine of 2, factor out the 2, x minus pi over 2, all right, so our period is going to be 2 pi over this term, we call this b. All right, this term is a. This term is c plus d, but d is equal to 0 in this case. All right, but our period is going to be always 2 pi over b. So here, our period is going to be 2 pi over 2, which is just equal to pi. Excellent. All right, the phase shift. With our phase shift, now we need to factor out our 4/3. So let's factor out the 4/3. So first of all, we can rewrite this as 4 times the sine of, factor out the 4/3, 4/3 times x plus, and we're going to have to do 2 pi over 3 divided by 4/3. Because when we factor the 4/3, we need to divide 2 pi over 3 by 4/3. So we have 2 pi over 3 divided by 4/3. That's equal to 2 pi over 3 times 3/4, which is equal to 6 pi over 12, which is equal to pi over 2. So that's going to be x plus pi over 2. So now that we've factored it out and found our sine equation, we just know that if we have it in actual sine form, we will have 4 times the sine of 4/3 x minus negative pi over 2. That's going to be our c value. This is our c value. Plus 0. That's our d value, okay? And that's the reason why is because our trig value is always in a times the sine of b x minus c plus d. Because we have that minus sign, that's why it's negative pi over 2. So essentially, you can take your term 2 pi over 3, divide it by the coefficient here, 4/3, and then switch the sign. That gets you negative pi over 2. Negative pi over 2. Clear annotations? I'm going to do this. Amplitude is 3. Vertical shift is -1. Our period is 2 pi. Our period is always positive, by the way. So we have 2 pi over -3/2, which gives us 2 pi over 1 divided by -3 over 2, which is 2 pi over 1 times 2/3, which is equal to 6 pi over 3. All right, and divide each side by 3. That gives us oh, wait. Small mistake here. This becomes 4 pi over 3. So 2 pi times 2 is 4 pi. That's negative 4 pi over 3, but your period's always positive. So that period will be 4 pi over 3. Cannot be simplified further. Excellent. I find the amplitude, period, and frequency of the sinusoidal function. So here our amplitude is going to be the distance between -1 and -9. The amplitude would be, find the middle line, so you have -1 plus -9 divided by 2, which is equal to -10 divided by 2, which is equal to -5. And then that's the midline. So that's equal to midline. We go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So our amplitude is 4. It takes us 4 to reach maximum. All right, our period, clear annotations, is going to be at pi, or a maximum at pi, and a maximum at 5 pi. So 5 pi minus pi is equal to 4 pi. So we have a period of 4 pi. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . And our frequency, that's 1 over the period. Oh, that's not good. So our frequency is 1 over the period. Frequency, that's going to be 1 over the period. So that's going to be what's 1 over 4 pi? 1 over 4 pi. Alright, so all you have to do is 90. So you can stop this video if you want to, but you can just see me working through problems at my own pace. Alright. Up top. Amplitude is 2. Period is 2 pi. The amplitude is 2. The period is 2 pi. The frequency is 1 over 2 pi. The amplitude is 2. The period is 2 pi over 3. Maybe 1 to 3, so the amplitude is 4. The period is, maximums are 1 more than pi, so that'd be 3 pi over 4 pi over 3. Sorry, period is 1, 2, 3, so it's going to be 4 pi over 3. Frequency is going to be 1 over 4 pi over 3 will be just 3 over 4 pi. 3 over 4 pi. So that should just flip the numerator to the denominator. 2, 4 pi over 3, 3 over 4 pi. What did I write? Oh, right, the amplitude is 2. That's silly. I meant to say 2. Why did I put in 4? Alright. Amplitude 1. The period is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. The period is going to be 5 pi over 4. Wait, no. The period is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The period is going to be pi. Amplitude is 1. The period is 2 pi. Amplitude is 1/2. Period is 2 pi divided by 4/3 is 2 pi times 3/4, which is 6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2. Frequency would be 2 over 3 pi. And the amplitude period. So amplitude, once again, the amplitude is 2, not 4. Don't make that same mistake, Mr. Wall. And then the period is pi. Alright, amplitude. 0.5 to 0.5. So the amplitude is 0.5. So negative 0.5 to 0.5. So the amplitude is 0.5. Our period is 1, 2, 3, 4. That is, our period is pi. Frequency is 1 over pi.
There's Bo.
Hey. Almost. Amplitude is 1/2. Period is 2 pi divided by 1/2 is going to be 4 pi. Frequency is 1 over 4 pi. Factor out 7 pi over 12 divided by 1/2 is 7 pi over 24. No, divided by 1/2, that's going to be 14 pi over 12, which would be 7 pi over 6, negative 7 pi over 6. Vertical shift, -1. Amplitude is 1/4. Period is 2 pi over 4, which would be pi over 2. Frequency is 2 over pi. Pi over 4. Pi over 2. Phase shift is going to be negative 12 pi divided by 4. It's going to be 3 pi. And then switch the sign, so it's going to be equal from negative 12 pi to positive 12 pi. 12 pi divided by 4 is 3 pi. Vertical shift to +3. Amplitude is 4. Period is 2 pi divided by 1/2. It's going to be 4 pi. Frequency is 1 over 4 pi. Phase shift is going to be pi over 4 divided by 1/2, which is going to be 2 pi over 4, which is going to be pi over 2, positive. And vertical shift is +5. Amplitude is 1/2. Period is 2 pi over negative 3, but period is always positive, so just 2 pi over 3. Three over 2 pi for the frequency. The phase shift, 3 pi over 2 divided by negative 3. 3 pi over 2 divided by negative 3 is going to be 3 pi over negative 6, which is going to be negative pi over 2. Switch the sign, it just becomes pi over 2. Our vertical shift is +1. Up, up. Alright, hopefully, I might have made mental math error there, but negative pi over 2, right? Alright, I'm just going to stop recording.